Now, according to CEO Melekiari, NNPC is collaborating with investors and partners to re-establish a sizable capacity to deliver gas to the market in Nigeria. During the ADBEC Energy Conference in Abu Dhabi, the UAE, he predicted that Nigeria will become the region's key gas hub in 3 to 4 years. There are signs that banks and merchant banks are becoming more reliant on the Central Bank of Nigeria for liquidity. According to data from the CBN, financial institutions' borrowing increased in September this year to 2.68 trillion naira, up from the 1.77 trillion naira recorded in August. Now, joining me to discuss this in detail is a RISE business analyst, Chika Mbonu. Good morning, Mr. Chika. It's good to have you on the show.
How are you today?
Very well, thank you. And yourself?
I'm okay.
Good, good. All right, well, let's begin.
Let me start with the bank.
Yes, please.
Let me start with the bank. I mean, you occasionally read about this liquidity thing and where banks are like going to CBN for liquidity support. You know, so but let me just try and, just like we're doing this program, you know, help our viewers better understand what happens each time. Let me take a typical cycle. Usually the typical liquidity cycle for Nigerian banks, let's start from the end of the month or the beginning of next month. Well, the FAC allocation, this, you know, where the states and federal government go and share money, you know, happens. And because of the revaluation of the naira versus dollar, a lot of the naira now come to the hands of the states. So the FAC allocation is a lot. So beginning of the month, end of the month, beginning of the month, the FAC allocation comes into the system. And then based on research, about 50% of it flushes to the banks, you know, immediately. And what happens is that the rates in the interbank comes down to about 1%. Very low, you know. Now, as the month drags on, the Central Bank of Nigeria realizes that, oh, there's so much liquidity in the system. So they go in hard and debit the banks. First of all, for those that don't comply with the loan-to-deposit ratio, there's a sanction on CRR, cash reserve ratio for that. And then for those that deposits have grown during a month or so, they deposit them again for additional cash reserve ratio deposits. And so that starts sucking away money from the system. And so the liquidity the banks had at the beginning of the month that made the rest to be as low as 1% starts drying up. The other thing that happened, assuming there are bonds, banks that bought bonds, also they have been debited. OMO purchases have been debited. Then foreign exchange purchases, assuming that month active on in the market, they have been debited. So as these debits are happening, what you see immediately is that the liquidity in the banks, in the hands of the banks, starts reducing. And then the rate that I told you at the beginning of the month, maybe 1%, starts going up. And as they're drying up, what happens is that the banks, remember, the Central Bank of Nigeria is the bank of last resort to Nigerian banks. So there's this window where they have with Central Bank called the standing deposit window or standing lending window, where banks that have surplus money go and put into Central Bank, usually to a maximum of 2 billion, and banks that have shortfall of money go there to go and get short-term liquidity from Central Bank. And so what you see in this report is what happens. So at the beginning of the month, a lot of liquidity in the hands of the banks. Central banks start debiting, activities start happening, liquidity in the hands of the banks start drying up, and a lot of banks who don't have liquidity rush to CBN window, which is allowed to go and take money from Central Bank. Those who have surplus also go and give CBN. And that's where you have this thing that when the Central Bank reads the Monetary Policy Committee meeting, you hear things about the monetary policy rate is this, with a symmetric window of +3, -3, and +1. So if you want to borrow money from Central Bank, you will pay today 19.75. If you want to place money in Central Bank, you pay 15.75. So that's how it goes. So the cycle goes. So it's not a panic system. It's not that things are bad in the system. It's just that the liquidity of banks go up and down as activities as the month goes by and as activities bubble up.
Yeah, it's a response to what's going on. And it's a good thing you mentioned that, because there is that misconception out there that illiquidity could translate to instability or stress on the part of the bank. So, of course, you're demystifying that and saying there is nothing, there's no cause for alarm. But there is also the entire conversation around recapitalization of banks. As some people would say, this is long overdue. You know, we have the 25 billion naira. Lots of people would say, look, that's now inadequate given inflationary pressures. What's your take on that?
Yeah, you know, the baseline figure for capital for banks is 25 billion. Now, but you see, if you go to the balance sheet of the banks and look at especially let's say the top 5, you find that a lot of the capitals are in trillions. You know, actually, far above the 25 billion, because of the fact that they have been keeping their reserves in their books instead of giving them out as dividends. So yeah, there's that view that the capital of the banks need to be checked and then recapitalized, but also look at the things that happen. That's what they call the risk-awaited average capital, which central bank uses to measure banks, depending on whether you're a merchant bank or a commercial bank or a commercial bank that has international operation. And for most of the banks, especially the Taiwan banks and so a lot of Type 2 banks, the capitals are still within limits. But what's happening now is that to take on more business, a lot of them intentionally know that they need to go and get more capital. What I'm trying to push out down there is that there's no panic in the system that Nigerian banks are undercapitalized. No, that's far from it. But what's happening is that as they're chasing more business, due to the devaluation, they on themselves know that they need more capital. And what's happening is a lot of banks are moving towards what they call Tier 2 capitals, getting those kind of funds into the system, instead of going to the stock market to go and chase the Taiwan capital.
Understood. Okay, but you spoke about the LDR policy earlier, loan to deposit ratio, which of course is meant to encourage banks to lend to the real sector, well, as a stimulus, so to say. But if we juxtapose that reality against the hike in interest rates, what implications are there for that?
It's always a problem, because I keep saying that in the Nigerian banking system, sometimes it's like you say, on one hand this, on the other hand this. It's like you're running a race. You don't know whether to run to the left or don't run to the right, because the impediment to borrowing, and even from the borrowers, the impediments to lending, even from the side of the bankers. The question for the banks is that, are there bankable risks out there? Because it's not just go there and comply with the LDR ratio and then go and lose the loans. Because again, banks are measured on their non-performing loan ratio. So as they're even giving out those loans in compliance with the loan to deposit ratio, you got to keep an eye on your NPLs. Now, because what's happening now is this: with the cost of business for a lot of customers going so high. Look at the report that just came out the other day about the growth in the non-performing loans in the banking system. I think it's almost just a little below 3 trillion. And it happens when the macroeconomic environment is very, very weak. So when the macroeconomic environment is very weak, like it is in Nigeria now, it doesn't lend itself to lending. When you lend, there's a possibility that your loans will not come back. I'm sure that that even your salary has not been really dramatically increased, so your purchasing power has reduced. So if you go to the FMCG, they go and buy things now, you're not buying as much as you used to buy before. And so if you lend money to those people, they may not be selling enough. If you look at the results of a lot of the corporates, some of them made losses because of this devaluation.
Yeah.
And so that's the balance. CBN wants to push. A bit
of a quagmire.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
CBN wants to push, but go and lend. But the issue is there. Out there, do you have bankable account or projects to lend to,
yeah.
Because so that you don't lose your money too.
Right.
So a lot of banks just sit down there and said, instead of lending the money and losing it, let central bank debit me the penalty.
Absolutely, it's a lesser evil, isn't it?
Yeah. Evil, yeah.
But we have very few minutes left. Let's talk about the NNPC working with investors. What's your take on this?
NNPC, I always find it difficult to discuss the NNPC because first of all, there we are. I said NNPC is like the Airbus A380, for those who understand aviation, the biggest plane in the world, or the 747, it used to be the biggest in Boeing, that's standing on the wrong way, still running, but it hasn't taken off really. Or taken off, but just hanging above the trees.
That's quite the analogy.
Yeah, because there's so much capacity to do there. the results you see them publish, you need to remove the currency, naira, and put dollar. That's the expectation from us. You know, but we know where they're going to. Superior corporate governance, superior human capital, superior processes, you know, so that, you know, the international community will actually come out there and partner with them, and less government interference. You know, and we'll see some of it happening slowly. We have abundant resources. I mean, the report the other day talked about that in 3 wells, that under the production sharing agreement, that no production happened throughout the last 1 year. So you will see things like that. Our open quota is how much? 1.6, 1.8 trillion, 1 million barrels a day. Where are we? You know, we're still struggling with the, you know. So there's so much potential for our country. Gas, we're still firing it away, burning it away. So you can put that in context to what is talked about at least in Dubai or somewhere where the seminar is taking place.
Yeah, because talking about gas, you know, military has come to declare that in 3 to 4 years.
A lot of people actually say Nigeria is a gas country with some oil. Not an oil producing country with gas. Because our gas potentials are actually more than our oil potentials. And that's where our silver bullet lies. And we're hoping that happens.
So do you believe that his statement is realistic and achievable?
It's realistic and achievable. Remember what I said. We need an NNPC that's superior corporate governance, superior processes, superior human capital, you know, IPO, you know, listed in the stock exchange, so that investors will come and see, not the government-run parastatal. And that will help in attracting the kind of capital and partners they require to take the NNP to the next level.
All right, all the right points in place. Thank you so much, Arise business analyst Chika Mbonu, for being here this morning.